Hello and welcome to Hardcast, where we delve into the buddy cop comedy of Ninjak and Gilad. I'm Humphrey Erm.
And I'm Christian Claus.
Lifeline, give me Unity Volume 3, Armor Hunters. Alright, Chris. Well, thoughts of this as a tie-in? Since we have the main story already from our previous episode.
Yeah.
So how did this feel? Was it necessary? Was it fun?
It was fun. It wasn't necessary.
So you felt that the Armor Hunters volume explained things enough?
Well, again, it's just one of those things where, it's kind of hard to say because now you've gotten all this new information that it works. So it kind of feels like it was planned this way from the beginning. So now, just like you said last episode, is that you feel like there's something missing when you just read the Armor Hunters.
Mm.
Yeah, right. So that's kind of why I'm feeling like the more that I'm reading about this now, the more I'm kind of like, oh, well, I guess this was essential, or not essential, maybe is the wrong word, but it does help the story more. But I'm going to bring up the analogy like I did last time of basically the movie version of a book.
Mm.
There's so much other stuff in the book that people who read the book think this had to be in there. This is so important to the story. So I kind of feel like it's the same here, is that I didn't need to know that Ninjak and Gilad met the Armor Hunters before the final confrontation.
Mm.
I didn't need to know that. Maybe the final battle against Ginger would have been nice to have, because I guess now that I'm thinking back to it, we never really got an explanation what happened to her once she landed.
Mm.
But otherwise, I think it's fine. I don't know. I just feel like they didn't add enough stuff to this other than, yeah, it was fun. And actually, I wanted to check. I'm actually going to check right now while we're doing this. I wanted to check if in that scene where Gilad and Ninjak are spying on the Armor Hunters, the two Armor Hunters, if that was actually foreshadowed in the previous comic.
Okay, yeah, sure. Have a quick peek there. I'll just mention my thoughts then while you do that.
Yes.
So, again, I felt it was worked really well as a tie-in. It doesn't work on its own.
Okay. Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, obviously.
Yeah, of course. But let's say you're just a big Unity fan or something. I mean, obviously, there's so few books to buy within Valiant, at a time, that you could probably spurge yourself to buy a little bit more that month just to get the whole story.
Yeah.
But on its own, yeah, it's very confusing. I mean, not very confusing, but objectively looking at what's happening, it kind of gets a bit like, okay, now suddenly some stuff has happened in between these two issues. But again, that's fine because that's how it is.
Yeah.
Though there's one thing, though, that I'm not sure if it's a plot hole, because I can't really... Maybe you can discover it, too, when you're reading through there now. The end of the first issue. So, it shows what's called both Ninjak and Gilad, like beat into a pulp.
Yeah.
And I can't remember that being a thing in the first volume. Like, we saw them... Again, not that we have to see them hurt or anything. But the way they portray it there, especially for Ninjak... I mean, Gilad, I'm assuming, will regenerate it.
Right, yeah.
But the Ninjak, you kind of like, he's supposed to be the human among them. And it doesn't seem to have any repercussion at all except to show off that they're, dangerous foes.
Exactly.
So that's, I think, my only quote-unquote criticism, I guess. Because you show off something like that and it doesn't seem to have had a single, effect or, consequence.
Well, now that I'm looking at the... of Armor Hunters #1, Volume 1. And I was kind of hoping for some sort of shot in the comic where you see that hole that they're kind of looking through. I was kind of hoping that we would see that. Now that I'm actually going through it, they never even mention that there's I think it would have been so natural to have, what's her name? Quantum? No.
Livewire?
What's that? No, Quartz. No,
Helix.
Helix. That's the one. Yeah, it would have been so easy to have Helix say something about that she sensed a explosion somewhere, and she needs to go look for it. You know, the idea that plane landed or crashed, or the fact that. Again, I just think it would be so interesting to have just a shot of them looking at the armors, realizing that they're not the real armor, and then seeing Gilad and Ninjak in the back kind of spying, but something very subtle, something that maybe you just kind of see two outlines I mean, you couldn't really identify them if you didn't know who they were. You know what I mean? Just kind of subtly in the background, just to kind of tie this thing together. And now looking at that whole scene, it's very quick. It's only like 4 pages or 5 pages long. And 3 of those pages are just people getting ripped apart. And then one page is literally all in one page. They say, okay, these aren't the armors we're looking for. And that's it. And I think like now I kind of understand your point of view where you were saying that it felt like so much was missing, because I feel like this scene was an important part. It shows their strength, not only because, I mean, they showed their strength with the bomb, but that was a huge different type of scale kind of thing. With this one, I feel like it comes more to a personal level on our side. I feel like because we know the strengths of Gilad and Ninjak, we know how strong they are. I feel like it would have been better to show that fight that they have, to show, okay, how strong are they actually in hand-to-hand combat? How much could they actually hurt our heroes? And I think that would have been a very important distinction to make and to actually show in the Armor Hunters. So yeah, I totally understand where you're coming from with that sentiment that there's stuff missing here.
Yeah, but I don't think you're wrong either in terms of again, when you've read the book as you were comparing it to. You fill in any kind of blank, like either unless they were very specific about, okay, this didn't happen, unless they make a very like obvious change, you're just kind of assuming that it happened behind the scenes or in some form. Yes, you fill in the blanks. So, but again, definitely the first volume definitely works on its own, anyways. But this definitely, I feel, helps just expand it and makes it more fun, I feel.
Yeah, this is the kind of stuff that I think would be included in the movie, like if we made a movie out of this comic, because it does show. Because obviously, then we would be seeing more of all of the characters, not just. Not specifically just Eric, that we're kind of focusing on in Armor Hunters.
Oh, yeah.
So we'll be seeing much more of Gilad and Ninjak and how they are also fighting. And correct me I have no idea what do they do with the armor that they stole? Like they took that. Weren't they supposed to like take an armor, and then they had that whole. That they were getting that the armor that Ninjak stole from that area.
Oh,
what did they do with it later?
Oh yeah, that sort of well, not an armor, but it's more like a little mech.
Yeah, but even then, what did they do with it?
No, I don't think they do anything with it unless it's another tie-in.
Right? I can't remember. Like, what was the point of that?
I'm just going through the whole the thumbnails of the pages here, and I don't see them using it.
I mean, they didn't use it in the final fight. They used basically Ninjak's Deus Ex Machina at the end.
Yeah, but that had nothing to do with that. Like as a way of shooting it as a projectile or using a part of it or something.
Exactly.
I didn't even think about that because they kind of make a deal about bringing something out of there.
Right.
And, they're a bloody pulp, because of it.
Right.
I agree. That's odd.
So I'm just kind of thinking, because otherwise, if they weren't going to use it anyway, they could have just not fought them.
Yeah, no, exactly.
So I don't know. I mean, it would have been so simple to just have during that whole setup with Ninjak kind of going after all those things for his little device that he made, one last piece could have come from this armor or this mech. Because then it would have made sense that he kind of pushed to get one of these suits, because it could have been like even an ulterior motive. Like he wasn't even planning on using it against these guys, but he knew that this Russian base had something that he could use anyway. So he was kind of like, well, you know, when the opportunity strikes, and I have Gilad here with me who could kind of be my muscle, so let's use this opportunity to get this last piece that I need, because who knows when I'll be here again. That would have made sense, but I don't know what they use it for. I mean, again, maybe they're going to use it later in a different issue or something. But
I can't remember it. And even then it feels, because again, they make a point of it, but it doesn't really look important enough even when it's, you know, focused on.
Exactly.
The design is fine, but it's kind of generic. You know, just again, this little simple mech suit. So, but I would love to talk even more, Chris, on this. But what's called? It's, you know, you didn't want to spend too much time on this episode, so I was actually trying to keep track of time. So, but yeah, no, I agree. But again, I won't fault it, because if I don't notice something the first time around,
yeah,
I always assume that things were the emotional journey was smooth enough.
Yeah, well, I did notice it the first time around. That's kind of what I mean. Okay. Is that?
Yeah, not for me. This was my second time.
Okay, well, because I was just reading it, and I was kind of expecting something to happen with the mech, and because it seemed like such a Chekhov's gun, you know.
Oh yeah.
Like here, we're setting up this mech. We stole it at great cost to ourselves. We're in a bloody pulp. Which again, it was just weird that then next scene. And it's not a lot of time going through this.
Yeah, no, I'm not quite sure what the time frame is, but I'd say this is all taking place within 24 hours, like this whole event.
No, it's not. Taking a couple of weeks, isn't it?
Is it?
No, not the event, but I mean like the comic itself.
Oh, the publication.
Yeah. No, not the publication in that sense. I'm talking about like the events inside this volume. Happen over a span of a week, I think. Because there were some things, because at the beginning they have the live wire going about the whole 1 week ago. Also, by the way, just to bring up the point that I bring up almost every single time we read a comic, the time frame. This, I mean, I know I'm beating a very, very dead horse at this point, but at this point, wouldn't a date be perfect? Because here's what I'm saying. Because I mean, I mentioned this last time, that with these kind of huge events like Harada taking over the world, with this whole Mexico City thing happening, why can't there be a specific date? Because then when we're talking about 1 week from now, like when we're doing these tie-in comics, 1 week from now, 1 week ago, 2 weeks later, this kind of stuff, it gets very confusing because we don't know at what point you're starting to tell the story. We have this thing about 1 week ago, we're talking to what I'm assuming are Mexican people, because they have those weird,
No, I don't think it's Mexico. I think it's some other South American country. Yeah.
Well, I mean, again, but here's what I mean. Nowhere does it establish it until later. It establishes later.
Colombia, here it goes.
Colombia. Yeah. But it established it later. So here's what I'm thinking when I start this issue. We immediately see the aftermath of Mexico City, right?
Yep. Yeah, I mean, they make it very clear there, too. What's called Ciudad de Mexico.
Yeah, and then it says here 1 week ago. So I'm like, wait, so 1 week ago from Mexico City, or 1 week ago from now?
You're right.
And then they're talking in a different language. So I don't know if it's Spanish. I don't know if it's whatever. The old woman looks very Spanish. So I'm like, okay, so this is in Mexico. She's whoever is the speech bubble, because I'm still not sure who the speech bubble is talking to some Mexican people. It's pink, but it talks about MI6. So I was thinking Ninjak. So I thought this was Ninjak talking to me about what happened in Mexico and stuff like that. So
well, if it was, he would have put in some like bloody hells or stuff like that in the dialogue.
Yeah, but you can never be sure. That's the thing.
Yeah, exactly.
And so all this thing was happening, and they were talking about someone, and I was like wondering, like, how are they? What, white ghost, white person, white this? What? Like, how does that have to do anything with Mexico City? It took me all the way to like halfway down the page until I realized they were talking about Bloodshot. And then I'm thinking, wait, wasn't Bloodshot already part of the team before the Mexico thing happened?
Yeah, this was 1 week ago.
How is the 1 week ago? Yeah, but then where is the 1 week ago?
In Colombia. Yeah.
Yeah, I know it was in Colombia. No, I'm talking about like where as in when.
Yeah, no, like, but I agree. It does get confusing. I mean, for me.
So this is 1 week before the Mexico attack happened. Yeah. Right. So here's my point that I'm going to be reiterating this probably every single time we read a comic. Why not just add dates? You can say that this is whatever date, and then in parentheses you can even say 1 week before Mexico City. You know, this kind of stuff, it's not hard to do. It's not like it costs a lot of money to add extra money, extra words. And then we exactly know when we are what we were talking about. Because when we then switch to Russia now.
Then we know where now is.
Right, because it says Russia now. And I'm like, what is now? Is this Russia during the time of the bombing? Like, has the bomb just gone off? Because again, we were before that, we were in 1 week ago before the bombing. So we're just like, well, when are we now? So we could just say Russia, whatever, how, I don't know. It happened like, say 24 hours before bombing of New Mexico. That could be it. Russia, 24 hours before Mexico City. You know, and then we know exactly, okay, here's where we are in the timeline. Perfect. It's so simple. None of this backwards, forwards. I mean, obviously, when you go back to the 14th century and France in the 1960s.
Yeah, but those are those clear ones, you know.
Those are the clear ones.
You don't even have to have a caption for that. You know, like the Gilad flashbacks. Those are clear enough.
Exactly. And then I could excuse all the hour later stuff and stuff like that, because then we already know kind of where we are specifically. It's kind of like an establishing shot, you know, in film or even in comics. You have to first establish where the person is, and then you can move back and forth a little bit. You know, you can say hours later, and then we'd be like, okay, I get it. They're flying back from Russia. It's been a couple of hours, and now they arrived. But this is the problem with, like, I feel this is the problem with tie-in comics, because what you're trying to do is you're telling the story at certain points. You're not going in a chronological, I mean, okay, maybe you're going in a chronological order, but you are jumping between stuff that has happened.
And in these cases, it's not really, because I agree with you. I didn't think of it reading through, but I agree with you rereading it now.
Yeah.
But I think the main use for this kind of like, you know, 1 week earlier or whatever is to basically give you a surprise later in the story. Like, you know, like, well, like, let's say, well, in a way we kind of get it here, though it's not quite as, like, the best use of it. But we basically get a whole bunch of, like, you know, time before with Ninjak setting up his Deus Ex Machina.
Yeah.
But that's the thing, you know, it's by putting it in like this, it's a surprise. It's like, okay, so he had something prepared. And in those times it works, because then you're still following the main flow.
Yes.
And this is just like a quick thing, like, oh, so he knew, he was prepared. You know, it's like when you show like a scene of people planning while it's in real time. But then well, like in Harbinger, like in the last volume of Harbinger.
Right.
You know, we saw them all planning out, you know, oh, okay, we're going to do this thing, you know, and we thought they didn't know that, you know, Tarada was listening. and then they show off later, no, we knew we were listening.
Yeah.
I mean, that's, again, that works then as a surprise, because that's, just a quick showing later. But like, starting off this volume like this, I agree. And I think we've spent enough time on this, as usual. But I agree now, reading through her captions, this gets very confusing, because, again, because she's obviously speaking in the now. But she's speaking in the now page of the Mexico City, still speaking in the now while in Colombia, but everyone then is now taking place before. And then with her narration, we now have her also speaking in the past in the story. It just gets a bit confusing.
Is this a comics thing?
Again, it's a superhero comics thing. I mean, it can happen in any comic, but it happens a lot in here.
Yeah, but is this like a typical thing? Is this just the norm for comics, that they do this whole weeks before? They don't use specific dates or stuff like that.
It might be done to kind of give you leeway. Like, I mean, if we're being kind and not assuming laziness, or not, keeping track, I think it might just be to give leeway, because it could be. I mean, this is a smaller scale.
Yeah.
But you take something like when Marvel, that's a big event, like with Civil War and stuff like that. Because everyone's still sort of doing their own stories on their respective comics.
Yeah.
But then, okay, well, remember, Civil War's going on right now, so these things are off limits, or you got to keep track of this. So it could be in those cases, it's kind of done so things can kind of be like, oh, yeah, okay, this generally works. It's what's within the week.
Yeah, well, I'm still kind of thinking that Valiant has, Valiant has so few comics, if you know what I mean? Like, they have so many. I mean, they're not like Marvel and DC that have just like dozens and dozens
52
of different 52 different storylines that they have to keep track of. So, I mean, how many running comics does Valiant have? Do you know?
I'm not quite sure at the moment exactly what. But I think they never had more than assuming events. So I just think they usually just stuck around. Well, in the beginning they had 4 or 5. They had Exo Manowar, and then Shadow Man was the last one that came out after the first 4.
Yeah,
and they kind of stuck around there before then Quantum and Woody also came in.
Right.
But
see what I mean? That's überschaubar. It's overseeable. You can plot that out. You know what I mean? You could actually start writing actual dates, but still, as I said before, you can also just have stuff like the Mexico City attack. A week before the Mexico City attack, 24 hours before the Mexico City attack. This kind of stuff. So you can kind of do that whole leeway thing still. You just have to use the event. And even if we don't have the attack yet, we could to avoid spoilers, you can just have a countdown to nothing. There was this book that I read, God, what was it? I think it was one of John Green's books, Looking for Alaska. It counted down to a certain point in the book. And it was really interesting. So the chapters weren't going up in numbers. It wasn't just chapter 1, chapter 2, chapter 3. It was just going down. Like it said, I can't remember how exactly they wrote it, but I think it was something like 52 days before. And then, it kept on going down. So it did it in a timeline. But that's what I mean is why not add that in the comics, a week before? And then we're still we're because then it kind of builds up the tension, because we're okay, oh my God, what happened at that time? And then we can still have this thing where the chapters will go down, and then when the attack happens, it will then start, just like in the John Green book, it will then start saying 2 days later. Or you could just then start, and then in the tie-in comics, you can then start, because everyone has been sufficiently spoiled already by reading the previous comic, they can then say a week before the attack. a week before this, 2 weeks before that, that kind of stuff. So that's just my kind of 2 cents in the whole issue. Again, I should do a compilation about times that I talk about
this
kind of stuff.
Yeah, a little counter.
No, just a compilation. I think that could be its own special podcast of me ranting about the way that they use these time skips. Because I'm pretty sure that's going to be like a 24-hour episode or something like that.
Honestly, it'd be cool to see you tackle on some like Marvel DC stuff, because I'm pretty sure they do the same. Like did you ever read? Actually, no, I don't think they did that. I was gonna suggest the 52 from DC, like not the new 52, but the weekly series. But actually, no, I think you'd actually like that, because that is like that's the comic that was published in real time.
Oh yeah.
So like every issue only covered 1 week's worth of events.
Yeah, that's perfect.
So
I mean, you're gonna have the comic where Spider-Man just sits around doing nothing. Was this DC or Marvel?
No, DC. No, but this was okay. This wasn't tie-ins. This was just one series called 52.
Oh, okay.
And basically was 52 issues. Like that took a whole year to like publish.
Yeah, I think that sounds interesting. That's a nice experiment. It makes sense. And it sounds fun. But as I said, there is a much simpler way than just going a week before and a week later and stuff like that. So and I actually checked. Yeah, but I actually checked. Shout out to the Valiant subreddit, because they actually showcase in the banner what the current titles are, and there's 6. 6. Okay.
Yeah, there's Faith, Eternal Warrior Awakening, Britannia, Ninjak, Rapture, and Exo Manowar.
Yeah, see, so I think that could be plottable. Like you could set up, it's such a small group of books that they could actually just have a flow chart of who is where doing what and what events are happening in different places. I mean, you could literally just have a calendar and just write in the day's events for each comic, so that then the writers can look through it and go like, okay, so this is what's going to happen there. This is what's going to happen then. How can it lead up to that? I think that should be manageable.
Oh, yeah.
So the next weird thing that I saw in this comic that I want to shortly talk about is the...
Shortly. I did air quotes.
Is the Mr. Alcott scene.
Yeah.
With his daughter. Care to explain that to me?
It's to humanize him, I'm assuming.
Because it's weird. Like, what is that? Is that... Is it all being filmed? Because... So is the first panel her looking into her phone camera while she's chatting with her dad, or what's going on here? I don't. Again, I guess it's just a nitpick, because it's just such a weird scene in the middle of an attack, and I don't know. It just feels so out of place, and just also the whole way that it's set up. Like the mom wants someone to come in, and I don't know. It's just weird. I just feel it's very, very weird.
I see what you mean. I didn't think of it either. But yeah, it does feel a bit odd, because we're not really getting the idea of her using using a phone.
Yeah,
like we never see her holding a phone. Like it's ambiguous, which is kind of worse sometimes.
Right.
Because we only see one hand all the time holding this dog. And
yes.
And you don't even get that typical the way you draw to make it show a selfie or something. Like.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna expect to have, at least in the third panel, when she again talks to her daddy, which I would say, because I'm feeling like, well, is he off screen or something? And why is she kind of talking? Why is the mother then talking like in third person about the person, and if they're standing right there? And then I'm also kind of thinking like, well, if this is all filmed, then why are there different shots? Like, why is there suddenly a close up of the mom in that video that he's watching? It's just weird kind of thing.
No, I agree. It's again, I love having you on these things because no, but I
Because I
mean,
nitpick all the stupid stuff that
you know, but
no
these
actual
are
reader
okay
would ever talk
things.
about.
You know, but these are good things to nitpick. I feel like it's not like it doesn't
Are
hurt.
they though? I mean,
I think so because it doesn't. It's one of these things where it's like that thing I told you about. I think it was Grant Morrison who said, you know, he hates adults because they always ask the stupidest questions.
okay.
So like who refuels the Batmobile? So or stuff like that is like that's not an important question.
Yeah.
So like who cares? You know, no one
Right.
fuels it. That's not what it's about.
Yeah.
And you know, in this case, this is not a Batmobile thing. This is a story sequence being shown. They thought this was important to show.
Okay, because I kind of I kind of thought you were talking about how I am one of those adults who is thinking about how Alfred fuels the Batmobile.
So yeah, but again, it depends on. Well, then it depends, Chris. You know, do you get like frustrated, or are you just kind of like snarky about it? Because I just love snarking. You know that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just looking at it going like, I'm just thinking to myself like, why? Why waste a page and a half, actually pretty much 2 pages, for something that is awkward? It doesn't further the plot. It doesn't really speak a lot to the character. I mean, it just says that, look, he's a bad father, or he puts his work before his family. That's all it is. And you can represent that in a different way. I mean, I don't know why it was pushed in here, but it does feel very shoehorned in.
No, I see what you mean, but I think it's just humanizing. Like it points out this, because overall, I mean, sure, we get the whole Mexico City destroyed, but it is relatively quickly brushed off. Again, not in terms of like the knowledge of it, but there's other stuff going on. So I think a moment like this is to show like even on a sort of a higher up person.
Yeah.
I mean, first of all, we get to know a lot more about Miss Neville here. And that's always interesting. Obviously due to his work, I guess his wife got tired of it and divorced him. Since they mentioned about her doesn't Daddy have me this weekend?
Yeah.
So again, very nice subtlety there. I feel just easily understood without being as you know. So, honey, as you know, we're Daddy and me are divorced. But I agree, it's not entirely clear the way it was presented here. Like, I can kind of imagine what they were thinking. But if I could share a nitpick myself now that I'm looking here,
Yeah.
page 45, like after that whole thing with that guy coming in, Nigel.
Yeah.
I'm a bit annoyed with that his head is cut off all the time. Because I'm assuming he's bald, but we don't know that. He might have like a little mohawk or something. Yeah. Again, not being trying to be mean to the artist, because I actually really love the art otherwise.
Yeah, it's actually pretty good.
But I guess that's the thing with comics. It's not just about being a good artist. It's it's a cinematographer as well.
Yeah. But honestly, looking at this whole scene, what did this scene do?
I think it just shows, some of it, what's going on in the higher ups at MI6.
Yeah, but that's what I mean. Is that it has no purpose to the story that we're telling. It has not. The only thing that it has done is told us that this dude has an ex-wife and a daughter that he neglects for work. And not only that, but he's also kind of a dick to his subordinates. And that's what I mean, is like this scene has nothing to do. Like it doesn't tell us anything that we need to know, unless something is going to happen that they had to set up in this comic.
Yeah, no, I agree. It's not. This doesn't work. It doesn't really do anything for the main volume, and within here, it doesn't really do anything either.
It's 3 pages long, and it doesn't set up anything either. It's just
it could have been a one-pager. It made it been more economical with the panels, and they could have gotten the exact same story out of it, even assuming if it still was confusing.
Yeah, I'm just kind of wondering, like, what's the point at all? I mean, cut it completely. I mean, I think you could take that out. I mean, they introduced London, they established London with the dogs fighting there. You could jump from page 42 to page 46, and there would be no difference.
Well, yeah, but then in a sense, for page 42 on its own doesn't really work.
Right. Okay. Well, then jump to page 49, and then before they jump, obviously then it would be a little bit different. The kind of pacing would be off.
Yeah.
But the idea that Gilad would have to set up his flashback, but still, you know what I mean?
You know, I understand what you mean.
The story does not. There's nothing missing from the story if we don't find out that this guy has a daughter. So I'm just kind of wondering, like why do they add this in? They must have had some other story idea. Like they're setting something up for later. So I'm thinking that in the next story that he's in, like maybe the next Ninjak or something like that, they didn't have enough place in that comic to set up that he has a daughter, and that's going to become like an important part in the next story. Like, I don't know if Ninjak has to then kind of, like, I don't know, his daughter gets kidnapped or something like that, and Ninjak has to go save her or something like that. I mean, that could be a story, and then you had to set it up in this comic, assuming that everyone's going to read every single comic.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. I don't think, because you'd still have to have a reminder within the comic if it's like a tie-in or not, or like, you know.
Exactly. It's completely useless. It's 3 wasted pages.
So yeah, so you know, Matt Kent, what's called not all views are shared by both podcasters on here. So if you want to meet up and talk some point,
I would be amazed if he listens to this podcast.
So yeah, that'd be too. You know, what's called tweet at us, Matt Kent, if you listen to us.
Yeah, well, I would really love to know why those 3 pages were in there. Because if they don't set anything up, because I've said this thing now like 5 times, and you still haven't like said something like, oh, well, it does set up something. I'm assuming it doesn't set up anything.
Not so that I can remember.
Why use those 3 pages for this instead of using it for like some awesome action scenes between Gilad and Ninjak where they fight against these hounds, because those were like the most impressive things about this. I just loved the action. I loved the just the choreography of this whole.
Yeah, the action is really good in this series. In this,
yes, volume. It is. It really is. I mean, so much so that I actually mentioned it now. I mean, I'm actually talking about the action. I don't usually talk about like just how it looks that much unless it's really, really, really impressive. And I really like this. But so I'm wondering, like, why? Yeah, it's just like, why those 3 pages? Why?
Maybe for the artist's sake, you know, something a little bit more simple so they could just.
Yeah, maybe.
Because again, I don't know, Chris. I mean, I think you've made your point.
I made my point multiple times over.
So yeah, so let's move on to something else. No, I mean, again, I could, you know, but you know, maybe for our podcast listeners, could be better. I thought we could discuss a bit of the stuff that wasn't present in Armor Hunters. We basically get to see Ginger's backstory.
Yes,
we get to see some hardcore robot sex.
Yes, that was weird.
I like it. You know, just little sending emoticons to each other.
Yeah, which was kind of confusing because at some point I didn't try to decipher them anymore. You know, in the beginning I started to look at them kind of like, oh, what could this mean?
Oh, yeah, there's a heart. Yeah.
Yeah, well, those were easy. But I mean, a lot of the times then later when there were just these really weird symbols that I just had no idea.
They're talking dirty.
Those. Yeah.
Actually, you know, if actually now that I'm looking at it, I guess if we want to compare it to human reproduction, I guess some of the symbols could make sense.
Oh God, dude.
I mean, I don't know. I'm just looking.
Yeah. I'm looking at. Oh.
And the fact that it's for procreation, I guess it makes even more sense. But I like stuff like this because, in this case, we're just observance. It's almost like a nature documentary.
Yeah.
It's just kind of cool to see.
For me, it was just weird looking at this thinking, oh, so he's like a a being. Like it's not.
It's not constructed.
Just,
it's born.
Yeah, he wasn't constructed. He's like the Transformers.
Yeah, true. Yeah, the whole Allspark thing and whatnot. Yeah, exactly. But I think that's again, it's a nice thing. It's also one of these, showing and not telling. I mean, we're given, yes, the speech balloons with no actual language, but it's clear enough what's going on, and it's interesting too. Like I like the idea of how, again, I'm assuming they just share data of some sort, and then the idea that again, just using our terms for it, the female. What's called burrowing it into the ground, and I guess sort of setting up a bit of a factory uterus or something. I mean, it's interesting though. That's cool science fiction. So I love that part. I totally forgot about this scene until I reread it. But what are your thoughts then of, because then we just have this awful tragedy, which I like. I like when space is shown as dangerous.
We have this awful tragedy, which I like.
Yeah, true. But it's just, I like when space is shown as dangerous.
Yeah, of course.
But what's your thoughts then on this?
It is. Yeah.
Yeah, but then this stranger then, someone we never met before. So what are your thoughts on him? Not that you get a much impression, but there's a mystery about him. What's your thoughts? Who is he?
Well, it doesn't really matter. I mean, that's the great thing about it. He was this one-off character that can be used later. I mean, he did give a little bit of background to himself. I mean, he did say that, he knows how to repair robots and he's been doing this for a while. And I like that. I like that he's just, for us, he's just a guy. He served his purpose. He was the one who rebuilt Ginger, or basically made her who she is today. And I like that. I like that we just got this little taste of who this person was. And it gives the option for the writers to then develop him further if they see it fit.
Yeah, it's one of those, yes. Again, we'll use the word like seeds a lot, in terms of planting them. Yeah,
and I really like that.
So, all right. Yeah, no, just curious if you had any, because, it's, again, this little mystery about him.
Yeah. I mean, I'm always saying that I kind of expected the whole tragedy thing, the meteorites and stuff like that. I kind of expected it to be an actual person or like some sort of war that was going on or something like that, because that's like the typical thing. You have these, we have it in Dragon Ball and stuff like that. You have Frieza taking out the entire Saiyan race and stuff like that, because then it builds drama, then we would have Ginger kind of in the back of her mind, kind of always wanting to get revenge on her species or her family or whatever. But to see it just be an occurrence, like something that just happened, it's at the same time very interesting that they would go this way, and also kind of disappointing, because then you could have like this whole Ginger story arc where she goes off and tries to find her parents' killers or her species killers and confronts them and fights them and stuff like that. But who knows? I mean, maybe those rocks were sent from someone.
It's the same rocks that killed the dinosaurs.
Right. Now they're back for revenge.
So, yeah.
No, I like it.
Yeah, no, I liked it too. So, just, again, Ginger's a very interesting character, I feel. Nice design. Yeah. I mean, again, sentient robots aren't new. But there's something cute about having this.
I do like that transition.
Oh, the panels?
No, the transition at the end from page 48, where the end of that flashback where it was like, my name is, and then the first thing said is Livewire. Or maybe it would have been, because the way I read it was, of course, my name is above Los Angeles. Just like, oh, okay, that's an interesting name. I mean, obviously, I get that it's supposed to be Ginger, but still, I mean, just the transition was pretty fun.
Yeah, but it makes sense then with their connection after the whole Armor Hunters thing. So, even if it wasn't intentional, it definitely works.
I'm liking Livewire more and more. I mean, she's becoming such an interesting character, such a relatable character, such a fun character to follow, because she has this power, and especially with all these mechanical heroes, I mean, especially with Bloodshot, she has such power over Bloodshot, it feels, that I'm really looking forward to seeing what happens with her, like her story. I really want to see more of this.
Well, she feels like she's a good character. I mean, it's what's called. She kind of from the get-go has this thing that like Tony Stark was introduced with later. This idea of sort of, Tony Stark got this whole thing about like telepathic hacking.
Right, yeah.
I mean, it was more of a sense of just giving him something to do while fighting. So like, oh yeah, I'm actually hacking through these things while I'm doing these cool things. But here, being from the get-go, it is, again, a very useful power. And it's also versatile. Because from what we're seeing, she kind of just has to pose a bit, like with her hands sticking out and the one holding her head a bit. And she does things. So in those ways, it's a very good, like, power set. But also, character-wise, I mean, it's great. She was what's called sort of the favorite disciple of one of the biggest villains in the Valiant universe. I mean, that's, one of Harada's favorite pupils.
Oh, yeah.
So, I mean, that immediately gets like a nice drama there. Like, oh, wow, sort of like a bad guy turned good, or was she ever really bad? Or again, and then, being part of this team and stuff, she's a really solid character. I love her too. And honestly, speaking of her, I actually wrote this down as its own point. So what's called on page 10, her coming out of the water, like I feel the artist here really like I let out an audible when she came out there. That's wow.
I think that says more about you than the art.
No, but just like, oh gosh, she looks so beautiful there. So just like, yes, the outfit, her hair, just like, So good job, Stephen. Good job. But to go on a less what's called pervy, compliment. I honestly, I mean, I didn't get scared. Like, I guess I knew it was coming, but I genuinely had like a bit of a jump on the page with like Bloodshot's reveal.
Oh yeah.
Again, not like, didn't throw my Surface to the floor. But it was genuine, like, whoa, like, whoa. Again, it's just such a lovely page there because it's not just that it's Bloodshot, but just the whole covered in mud there, the shadow. I love that page. It's beautiful.
Yeah.
And honestly, and I would just love to see that. What's called again? And I know it's always I bring this up a lot.
Yeah, you're doing that a lot.
So about because again, this is fine as it is. It's not that. It just I feel because they are planning on making all these movies.
Yeah.
I guess a way to spin it so it sounds more positive. I hope they can capture as well as they do here. Not so much that it's better in live action. That's a good word. But if they can capture the same kind of feeling.
I think that would be more of a word that we should be using when we're talking about the what we want to see on screen.
Well, I mean, sometimes I mean it too, like the thing about Rye running into the floor, because it's one of those things where motion would help sell it even more. Like, again, it's beautifully drawn and stuff, and the idea is still clear. It just, oh man, but it would be interesting to see it just, whether live action or animated or whatever.
But that brings us back to this point that I was talking about with the humor in Quantum and Woody, that the way that you read really defines your enjoyment of something like this. So basically what this here is a jump scare.
Yeah, it is.
And again, we're reading these books digitally. I don't know if the jump scare would have worked if it was a page turner. Like if suddenly I turn and then suddenly there's Bloodshot. I mean, you're reading it on your Surface, so I'm assuming you're swiping up and swiping left or whatever.
Yeah, I'm swiping what's called left all the time. I have like a single page.
Right, you see a single page and you swipe and swipe. I'm reading it on a PDF viewer, which, by the way, is the worst way to read comics. I mean, I should probably. If this podcast ever makes money, which it will never do, I would buy myself like a Surface just to read these comics because it's such a different feeling of having it in your hands and actually reading it page by page instead of scrolling on a PDF viewer. But I didn't have that effect at all. And I think part of it has to do with just that I'm scrolling. I'm basically every page is a reveal. I don't know. It's a weird feeling.
No, but that's true. I didn't think. I mean, I'm actually gonna. I mean, obviously, I've already been surprised at it. I'm actually gonna go to continuous. I'm just gonna kind of replicate the feeling here.
Yeah.
That's a hiding. He was off the grid for sure, and who could blame him? Blah blah blah. Running through. The guy probably needed a break before he snapped. I don't know. I mean, it starts right there.
Well, I don't know. I mean, I'm reading it page by page as well. I have a single page each time, and when I scroll a little bit, it just jumps to the next page. But I didn't have that effect. Maybe I'm just emotionally dead inside. I don't know.
Unless it's Rye.
Unless it's Rye. Man, I did get emotional in that show, didn't I?
That was nice seeing you get really excited, though. You know, because otherwise it's kind of more a lot of like this episode's been, you know, nitpicking what's called layouts. So and this
and time.
Yeah. But I like. I really was affected by that page. I thought it was really like, again, like you said, a jump scare. I didn't even think of calling it that.
Yeah.
But that's what it was.
Yeah.
And also something just, I like Bloodshot's involvement in here. I mean, even though he was part of Harbinger Wars, you know, so he's already been part of a crossover, so to speak, or like a what's called event. I find his involvement in this event, I like the mysteriousness of it. Like he never really talks to anyone else but Livewire.
Right, I was about to say, he doesn't talk a lot anyway in this comic.
Exactly. So it's just, I mean, again, it's not his, you know, he's not part of Unity, so his appearance, you know, it's thanks to Livewire that he appears.
Yeah.
And he's going to have his own tie-in, so, you know, I guess
but again,
all of that will be shown there.
That scene in the Marrow headquarters where Livewire is scanning herself, that was a powerful scene. Especially because it was kind of cut up between issues.
Oh, yes.
When they revealed Bloodshot was pointing a gun at her head, ready to kill her if she identified as a Vine, that was amazing.
Well, it shows her character, too, really strongly.
Yes. And just the way that he's just standing, I mean...
And that he would do it, too. I mean, it shows this edginess about the Valiant universe. I mean, again, there's characters in Marvel and DC where this could have, you know, a similar situation would have worked. You know, like the Punisher or something.
Yeah.
But, again, the idea that we have a character here who is, you know, cares so much and feels so responsible for the fate of humanity that she's prepared to die if she finds out that, you know, she might be part of the problem.
Yeah.
And then you have a character who is prepared to do what she says.
Yes. And I just love the way that then they talk about his humanity in that as well. That basically he's showing how robotic he is in this scene by basically saying, I'm going to kill you if you tell me to. But then she also talks about how he does have this humanity still and kind of reassuring him that he is still human, at least a little bit. But I gotta say, what really like sold that reveal is the art of that panel.
The middle one, like the first
the middle
panel,
one, yeah, on page 59. I mean, just she reveals that she's human, but the way that he's standing there.
Oh god, the gun's in the first panel too. I didn't even notice it.
Yes, I didn't notice it either until you just told me. That's awesome.
No, but that's just good, and it doesn't feel like a bad thing because it's subtle.
And then again, it's so dark on dark. It's like gray on black that you don't even see it now. I mean, it's such a great.
But yeah, it makes it kind of feel like it's not just sort of like you can kind of get sometimes with certain like films, especially in animation, where you know, wait a minute, aren't they a little too close here compared to the previous shot or something? Well, you know, we just cheated a bit for the emotional effect, but here it kind of feels like no, it was always like this.
Dude, they even did it, dude. Page 39, when they set up the scene, the guns in the panel.
Oh, God, yeah. Oh.
I didn't even notice that.
Me neither.
In both panels.
I'm now unsure if it's us that are just unobservant.
Maybe we just suck.
Because we we see his shadow there too, I believe.
Yes, that's his shadow. Oh my God. I mean, I was looking at these panels going like, who is she talking to? This is so weird. And I didn't even notice the gun nor his shadow.
But in a sense, but reviewing it now, it definitely makes it all the more fun, but or engaging. But it makes it feel then again that it's not just, like I said, it's not just he was there all along. It's like no, dude, he was there all along.
And not only that, it also makes sense why she's telling this story, because she's telling Bloodshot.
Yeah, true. Yeah, but we're so used to, because I don't know why. Why a lot of comics these days don't like using thought balloons. They prefer to use caption boxes.
Yeah.
So, but otherwise, I see them a lot. Talking for them by aloud. But I'm assuming we're supposed to see it as soliloquies. So being a little fancy there, but no one's actually hearing it. Just for us. But yeah, no, this honestly, and again, this is again one of those things. As I said, I'll use this word from now on. If they can capture this, in like any other medium, other media. Because it was always cool, that one page, but after your sort of analysis on it, I appreciate it even more.
That was good. It's good that we talked about this particular scene, because
well, again, this is part of what I like too. As I said, I love discussing the art. When it feels like there's, it's always worth it in that sense, but in this case, it excelled.
Oh yeah.
So there's actually moments to think about it or like discuss it.
So that is one thing that just as a closing kind of thing, I wanted to say that that's one thing I do like about comics or just art kind of like this, is that when there's a scene that is supposed to be very dramatic or very revealing, or just like in this case where we see clearly that Bloodshot is standing there with the gun to her head, they up the art. They put more details in. They make it more impressive looking. Because again, if you then check the next shot, or the next panel, Bloodshot is more in shadow. He's not as detailed. Obviously, it's also a wider shot, so we don't see that much detail. But I like that it's kind of the art equivalent of the dun sound in a movie.
That's true.
You turn around and then suddenly there's like a boom, there's like this like, oh, this is what you need to look at. This is the money shot. This is the one that we paid the biggest money for. And I like that it's in the art. It's just basically I drew it better. But it's not like you're thinking to yourself like, well, why don't you draw all of them like that? Because there's such an amazing effect to it.
Well, that's the thing. In this case, it's not simply the fact that they just put more effort in. They have a good. He draws at a good level of quality, anyways. But yeah, she said this. It makes a point. It stresses a point.
It's always good art. I'm just saying that I think the detail on the veins, the six pack, all these shadow details. I think
folds on the shirt too. That's very rare to see.
Yes.
That's a very rare thing to show.
It just looks impressive. So then when you see that panel, you just get this shiver down your spine, just like oh, this is so good. And actually, with the extra story reveal, it's perfect.
Yeah, but but you were mentioning that. I'm not sure if you can have the same. I'm sure you can have similar things in other visual mediums. But I'm not sure you can have it quite the same way in, like, let's say, animation. Obviously you have shots in animation where you put more time into it.
Well, you have those ugly shots from Ren and Stimpy and those kind of
so that's true
shows.
But those are again entirely like painted differently.
Yeah, and also kind of more comedic effect.
Yeah, no, but it can work for anything. But I feel in comics in particular, because you're always given a moment in time. You're having a story being told, and each panel. Obviously, there's all about tone and what's called logic and flow. So you wouldn't want to change the art style every panel unless you're experimenting with something or some reason for it.
Yeah.
But within a comic, I feel this works more in that sense, because you're right. The whole like ugly hyper rendered background images for like SpongeBob or Ren and Stimpy. That's definitely an equivalent. But here I feel like it can be done a bit more naturally because it's not like it's a entirely weirder thing. You know, it's not like Clayton Crane suddenly painted this panel.
Yeah.
That would have been off. You know, that'd be like, even if it looked good, it would have felt off in this case.
Yeah, oh yeah, definitely.
But here's more about well, or actually, it could be a bit like that. You've seen those, seen that GIF from One Punch Man, I think it is. You know, when he like gets serious because he's he's otherwise drawn, you know, has this very simple face due to, you know, the webcomic origin. But then he goes all serious and suddenly, you know, like all these rendering on him to furrow his brow. I guess that's kind of an equivalent here in terms of, yes, okay, now it's serious. Now it's like,
right.
But I like that observation, Chris, because again, you know, I don't hear too often, I'm not saying that we're now, you know, at a pinnacle of discussion about comics as a medium, but I don't often hear about this. I mean, whenever, you know, I listen to anyone, the few times I do listen to comics podcasts, it's always very plot oriented or, you know, character. And it's always discussing about the writing, you know, the plot, why the writer is stupid. But to actually put so much time into discussing not just how this was well drawn, you know, because they sometimes do that if it is exceptional, but to discuss how it actually impacts story beat and like storytelling. So I really liked it. This is definitely a favorite moment of mine in our podcast.
Yeah, well, I like talking about the art too. I mean, I can't talk as much about it because I don't have like the background like you do.
No, but you have you have this what's called, you have cinema background, and that's the same rules. Composition, like you know, composition.
Yeah, I guess I do.
And that's the key thing there. You can still, like, even if you don't know exactly like what's going on in terms of the rendering or process, it's clear enough, you know, what's going on.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, we'll leave it at that, I guess. That was the 37th episode of Hardcast, detailing Unity Volume 3, Armor Hunters. For more content from me and Chris, follow us on Twitter at Humphrey_Aram and at Christian D. Claus. You can listen to our entire backlog of episodes on podbean.com/ValiantHardcast. Remember to like us on Facebook.com/ValiantHardcast for news and reactions related to Valiant. Catch us later for our next episode discussing Exo